Welcome to Your Best Defense Podcast with Jacqui Ford. Passion, energy, and courage. Jacqui Ford is unintimidated and a bit untamed when she needs to be. Your best defense is a good offense. Jacqui Ford, not afraid of a fight, and always fighting for what is right.
Welcome to Your Best Defense Podcast. My name is Jacqui Ford, and I'm excited to be here with you today. We're going to be talking about federal criminal defense and what it means to be charged in federal court, the processes, how they're different from state court, and why it's important that if you're committing a federal crime, being investigated for a federal crime, or charged with a federal crime, you need to find the best Oklahoma City federal defense lawyer you can find. I'm excited today. We have with us my friend and colleague, Mr. Jack Dempsey Pointer. Mr. Pointer has been practicing criminal defense for well over 45 years in the state of Oklahoma. His practice is primarily in the federal courthouse. Jack, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much. I did not bring my chisel so I can show you how I wrote Hammurabi's Code. Miss Ford and I have embarked on a journey in federal court that very few people I have admitted to that privilege. Of course, she's a tremendous trial lawyer in Oklahoma City in civil and in state court, but in federal court, I felt like she needed a little bit more experience, and that's why I have kind of taken her under my rather exhaustive wings.
And for that, I could never be grateful enough, Jack. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Believe me, you're going to be paying the price. Miss Ford approached me about talking about this federal criminal defense in Oklahoma City. It's something that I do know something about. As she said, 45 years I've been doing this. That takes it back to probably when most of the people listening to this, parents were still in at least junior high school. To start off with, federal criminal defense by Ms. Ford and myself in Oklahoma City is a very unique area. In fact, you're not going to be able to go to the phone book and say federal criminal defense. It's not going to bring up anybody that probably has any experience. On the internet, a little bit different deal. A lot of people pay for that privilege, but Ms. Ford, as a federal criminal defense attorney, has taken this method, which I'm highly impressed with. Let's start about how Ms. Ford and I approach a case indicted in federal criminal court in Oklahoma City.
What does it mean to be indicted in federal criminal court, Jack?
The federal government in criminal cases do them one of two ways. One is a complaint. And a complaint is just a written document that is supported by an affidavit by one of the alphabet agencies. FBI, IRS, ATF, DEA, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
And Secret Service does not go by SS. They find someone, or it's been reported to them that a crime has been committed under federal jurisdiction. And you got to remember, federal jurisdiction is limited. For instance, in civil cases, in federal jurisdictions all over the country, there's a minimum of $75,000. The amount has to be $75,000 in controversy or constitutional issue. If it's not $75,000, then it goes to the state court. So federal courts are courts of limited jurisdiction, and they are presided over by what we call Article 3 judges. That's set forth in the Constitution. Article 3 judges are district court judges that are appointed by the President of the United States, and they serve for life. There's no re-elections, there's no votes of confidence or anything like that. They're actually in there for life. Federal judges, there are 3 districts in Oklahoma. The Northern District, which takes in Tulsa, the Eastern District, which is surrounded by Muskogee, and then the Western District, which roughly is from west of I-35, south to the Texas border, and north to the Kansas border. It's one of the largest districts in the United States. There are 93 federal districts in the United States. All of them have district judges, varying amounts. There are also 93 United States attorneys. Those individuals are political appointees. You may remember the case when there was recently an election. The president took office and immediately sent out 93 faxes to people who had been appointed under the prior administration. Thank you for your service. It's no longer needed. Pretty infamous day for a lot of guys.
So they work at the will of the president, and whatever that administration's agenda might be is probably strongly influenced by what their U.S. attorneys in all the different districts are motivated by as well. Is that right?
Yes. For instance, here in Oklahoma City, we have a U.S. attorney, Mr. Sanford Coates. He has a staff of probably 35 to 50 U.S. attorneys. These are people that are highly experienced in federal criminal practice. There, of course, is a civil section, but mainly it's criminal that they handle. And these individuals are the ones that are responsible for directly connected to the alphabet agencies. And when you're practicing federal criminal defense in Oklahoma City with Miss Ford and I, you get an education on this pretty quick. One of the things that you've got to remember is when I was talking about the limited jurisdiction of the federal government, we have interstate highways, which are nationally funded and built by states highways. Those highways the law is enforced on those highways by Oklahoma State troopers. They could be enforced by the FBI, DEA, ATF, whoever, to go out there and write traffic tickets and things of that nature. But that's a terrible resource, or terrible waste of a very expensive resource. FBI agents don't need to be writing traffic tickets, is what I'm saying.
So what do these alphabet agencies do? How do we find ourselves in the limited jurisdiction of the Western District of Oklahoma, or any federal court in the state of Oklahoma for that matter, Jack?
Let's go to some examples. Federal banks that are federally insured by the FDIC, if a teller or someone like that, a bank officer, someone commits a crime of taking money or misappropriating it or misplacing it or misusing it, that is automatically reported by management to FBI or Secret Service, IRS. It just depends on what it is.
We have some experience here, right? It's not you get caught and you pony up all the money and return the money like we've seen in the past, and so they don't say anything, no harm, no foul. In fact, there's not a pay it back and we won't say anything deal in federal court, is there, Jack?
Miss Ford and I prosecuted a federal case in Oklahoma City where the individual was caught, and he paid every dime, several $100,000 of the money back immediately.
Prior to the feds even knowing anything had gone missing.
Nobody was involved. We were dealing with a civil lawyer on the money, okay? Yeah, we paid the check and all that kind of good stuff. And of course, attorneys, civil attorneys or criminal attorneys, they cannot guarantee there won't be prosecution. So we tried to nail them down and say, we're not going to tell anybody. And we were quickly informed that this instance must be reported to federal regulators.
It's mandatory.
Yes,
yeah.
It's absolutely, or the person would get in trouble, you know. So we got a situation where the next thing we got was a phone call from the lawyer for the FDIC in Dallas. Then we got a phone call from the FBI, and we began our merry journey through the federal defense system here in Oklahoma City. Miss Ford and I did. Fortunately for the gentleman, he received one of the few sentences that I have ever seen where probation was granted. That's highly unusual. The federal sentencing guidelines and the federal law provide that there is no longer any parole in the federal system. If you get a 10-year sentence, you're going to do 8.5 years flat.
Now, Jack, that doesn't sound like easy time. Sounds a little different than state court too, right? So in state court, I can get a 10-year sentence depending on the crime that I committed, and let's just say it's a measly little white-collar crime, as people like to downplay white-collar crimes in this country. I might not serve all 10 of that in state court, but in federal court, with there being no good time credit and no parole, we're serving every day.
The state court sentence you're talking about is probably a deferred sentence and pay the money back and so on and so forth. The sentence that you would receive in federal court is not only pay the money back, but also under the sentencing guidelines, we have a chart and we have a table. We compare how many points are added and so on and so forth, and then you come up with a range of punishment. That range of punishment used to be mandatory, but it is no longer mandatory. It is now advisory to the federal judges. However, the judges follow it pretty closely, but I can assure you, if it's an embezzlement from a federal institution, federally insured institution, a federal agency, beating up a postal officer, you don't like the SEC, all that kind of stuff, that's all going to go federal. And you're going to do time, flat, hard time. We have 3 types of prisons in the federal system. There are the camps, the ones that are so notorious that everybody calls them camp fed. Believe me, try to envision yourself 24 hours a day. They tell you when to get up until you go to sleep, and you do what they say. And you take a banker who has owned several banks, has to go out in the morning and milk cows. It's not too easy for him. Then we have the Federal Correctional Institutions, FCI. The camp and FCI in Oklahoma, we have one, and that's in El Reno. That's a federal camp, and that's also a federal correctional institution. The Federal Correctional Institution is behind wire, not walls, behind wire. Very difficult to get in and get out of. Of course, you hear of no escapes from there. The third type of institution is basically a prison, and that would be places like Leavenworth, Kansas. And Leavenworth, Kansas is very much like McAllister. It's a very strict environment behind the walls and so on and so forth and everything like that.
So it's not a place any one of our clients, future or current, want to find themselves. This isn't this is not easy time. So as criminal defense lawyers in Oklahoma, what do we do? What do we do to keep them from finding themselves in one of these camps?
One of these 3 places.
Yeah.
Well, it's like any other case except it's accelerated. You must understand that under the federal system, they have something called the Speedy Trial Act. And the Speedy Trial Act basically says the first time you appear before a federal magistrate or judicial officer, a clock begins to run. And that clock is 70 days. At the end of that 70 days, we're not talking about, we're in there talking about getting a jury, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. The judge is calling a jury. You're getting ready to try this case.
70 days from indictment to jury trial.
Not appearance, initial appearance.
Initial appearance to jury trial.
Thanks for listening to Your Best Defense Podcast. If you need a passionate, energetic, and unintimidated defense attorney, contact Jacqui at FordLawOKC.com or call 405-604-3200. Remember, your best defense is a good offense. Jacqui Ford, not afraid of a fight, and always fighting for what is right.